Today on Doomed! Can you all believe that we are halfway through September pretty much at this point? I mean, the year 2020, in all of its horrible glory, I guess, is just moving on. We're just months away from this year being over. And of course, the election is coming in November. It's coming up. But when I say the election, of course, I mean the big general election. Trump-Biden, of course. But before we get there, we still have one very important race left in the primary season. And we're going to talk with one of those people who is in that race, and that is the progressive challenger to the incumbent. Without any further ado, let's pull us both up on the screen so you can all see me and her. Here we go. Jess Scarane. She is the progressive challenger for the U.S. Senate seat in Delaware. The election, I should say, is coming up September 15th. That's this upcoming Tuesday. Folks, welcome Jess to the show.
Hey, how's it going?
Thank you so much for coming here tonight. You know, we're just days away from your election. I really appreciate you taking the time to, away from all the campaigning to come here and talk with us.
Well, hey, I see this as a welcome break, and we're outside of the hours for call time or voter contact. So
right, I try to do that. Yeah, I try to do that. I've had a few progressive challengers for the House seats this year. And then local seats. But you are my first Senate candidate this year,
nice.
So there you go.
I'm happy about that.
And it's a really big, important race, and I want you to explain to people why that is, because it's not every day that a progressive challenger is going for the Senate. A lot of these seats that are won by the left, I'm sure people realize, but I'm sure they don't really think about it when they really when they're looking over all the races that have been won. These have all been House seats. The Senate is one area where the left has not really broken through, and that's what you're trying to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it is incredibly important that we pay attention to both chambers. It's fantastic that we are winning density in the House, and I think even seeing what having 4 to 5 really progressive members has done to the national conversation. And I'm really excited to see what happens when you double that and then double that again. But we can't forget the Senate, because we need to continue to pass legislation that is going to have to go through both bodies. And right now the Senate is a far more conservative body, and we need to tackle races in the Senate and win them where we can. And I think Delaware is a perfect example and a strategy that we are trying to enact, because it is an incredibly small state and an incredibly democratic state. So we're talking about winning a statewide race for fewer votes than many of these House candidates got in their primaries. Right. In our 2018 Senate primary, 84,000 people voted. Wasn't even the winning number. That's how many votes there were.
Wow.
And we're still assuming increased turnout, and we're planning for that. But that is far fewer votes than you see when you just see Massachusetts Senate race, for example. There were 1.3 million votes in that primary. We're talking about a fraction of that. So we're really looking at this as one of the ways we can start to build this leftist and progressive power is by targeting strategic seats and saying, this is a state that is overwhelmingly Democratic and is represented by one of the most conservative Democrats right now. Is a real mismatch for our voter base and the representation that we get. And it's a state where, again, your money goes further, because we're only trying to get tens of thousands of votes, not hundreds of thousands or millions.
Right. Strategically, it makes tons. It's a small state too, so it makes so much sense to if the left's going to win somewhere, because if you look at, there's a progressive caucus in the House. We have all these great House members, the Squad, and then all these incoming House members like Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush. They're going to win their general election first, but of course, it's pretty clear that they're going to win those.
They seem safe. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you look at the Senate, I'm trying to think off the top of my head who out of the 100 senators there are. Bernie Sanders, of course, Elizabeth Warren, Jeff Merkley, Ed Markey reborn as a
Yeah.
leftist. Yeah. I mean, that's off the top of my head, 4 people. I mean, I can't really, we need some progressives in the Senate. And to me, this race is extra interesting because this is for what is Joe Biden's old Senate seat.
Yes. Yes. It's very interesting. I think, particularly given that this is sort of the last stand for the left in a year where many of us were not Biden voters in the primary. And I think that is a wrinkle that people really appreciate about this race. And there's this kind of interesting parallel as well. I mean, Joe Biden was elected at age 29 and turned 30 before he took office. I'm running to be the youngest woman ever elected to the Senate. So there's like this kind of weird parallel, interesting kind of thing that's happening between his race and mine. Obviously, we're running on very different platforms and with very different messaging, but there's a lot of, I think, a little bit of weight to this race as well. Delaware has never had a female senator. There has never been a millennial in the Senate. So we are trying to break through all of these walls right now with this race and with this election on Tuesday.
Right. I knew about the first female senator from Delaware. I knew you'd be the youngest. But even knowing the youngest, it didn't hit me about how there's never been a millennial or obviously younger in the Senate. It's stunning. We're at the point where millennials are in their early 40s.
Right.
Like the older millennials.
Older millennials, it's like you're 40 now or about to be. And we're also the largest generation at this point. And I think it's interesting how I still feel like I'm being infantilized by some people, like people literally saying like, you're very young or calling me a kid. And I'm like, I'm a 35-year-old woman. Like, What were you doing at 35? Like you probably had children and were many years into your career as I am and had lots of life experiences that you were bringing to the table. But you really do see it from particularly kind of people in 60 and older of being very dismissive of our generation. And we've had this the whole time. Like we are the joke of the avocado toast and we don't save our money and we're lazy and we're this. And it's like, I'm so sick of hearing that from people who have held on to and hoarded wealth and power and prestige and refused to step aside for anyone else or refused to be willing to actually build anything and share anything with anyone who's not their immediate family. And I think a lot of us are really tired of that. A lot of us are looking at the world around us and saying, I'm, again, 35 years old. There are 3 recessions that I can remember as a young adult or adult that I've lived through. Right. And I was laid off in the middle of the Great Recession 2 years after I graduated from college and had to move home. And like, these are things that we get mocked for, living at home or not, these failure to launch things. But it's all actually an issue with the economy that has been left to us by the generations before us and the people in the ruling class and who are refusing to let go of the grip on power that they have.
Right. I mean, just hearing you talk this way as someone who's running for Senate, I mean, you don't need to win me over because, well, A, I'm not in Delaware, but B, you've already won me over by just being a progressive challenger to an incumbent. But I'm roughly the same age as you. So it's you've won me over.
Great. Perfect. Unfortunately, you've missed the registration deadline, so you can't even move to Delaware.
I can't make it all happen in how many days? 5, 6 days?
It's unfortunate because one vote is really a big deal in our state. We remind people of that all the time. Your vote can actually matter here.
Right. No, I mean, everywhere, really. But in a state like that, for sure. So let's really jump into this because I wanted to throw all those things in up front. In fact, I was on the Majority Report with Sam Cedar earlier today, and I mentioned how I was going to talk to you later in the day, and I had said actually sort of something like you said, but I said how with Biden, this being Biden's seat, and it's the very last progressive primary challenge of the year. This is our chance to get the last laugh after everything that happened, But yeah, so now that we've pretty much told everyone the stakes here, I want people to get to know you. So tell us a little bit about yourself and why you decided to run and run now, I guess, specifically.
Yeah. So I've been a Delawarean for 10 years. I grew up in New York State and went to college at Syracuse, where I met my husband, who is a native Delawarean. I kind of mentioned that the two of us graduated right before the recession. So after we graduated, I was living in Philadelphia, trying to get my life on track, and really couldn't find jobs. Even then, before recession, really struggled to find work, was working a lot of minimum wage jobs and trying to piece them together, still like working in retail and waiting tables. And even with a college degree, was only really able to find, unpaid internships to try to get experience, and then had to piece together work around that. And eventually I just couldn't keep up. I couldn't afford rent. I couldn't manage. And the recession hit, and I just had no options, moved home. Thankfully, my parents had space for me and were able to take me in. But then even after getting back on my feet, finding a job, I got laid off in 2010. So I've had basically the first 5 years after graduating just stops and starts, which I've heard from so many people in my cohort and generation, of just not being able to get a footing and to build on and to get kind of lasting work and good paying work. So at that point, that's when I looked at my now husband at the time and said, we've been living in 2 different states, like, let's figure out what we're doing with our life. And we decided Delaware is the place that we wanted to be. So I've been here for 10 years. And my day job is in digital marketing. I work as a strategist. But the place where I really have built community and tried to grow community in my city and state was through nonprofit work. So at first that was through tutoring and mentoring students, and particularly in reading. My mom's a public school teacher in reading, and she's always kind of instilled that if you don't get reading by 3rd grade, like, your outcomes for life are honestly affected. So that's what I focused on. And through that work, started to see how when you actually fill gaps in the individual needs that children or people have, they can absolutely flourish. But that happens so rarely in our society. It happens so rarely in the schools that these kids were coming from, where their classroom sizes are far too big, where the school funding has been cut over and over, their teacher doesn't have the supplies they need.
Right.
From there, I moved to, I was recruited to join a board of a nonprofit, became the board president there. And same thing, trying to do this work, recognizing that there are these gaps in our society and trying to fill it through nonprofit services. But that experience just really calcified in me that this is not the way to solve our problems, through this patchwork of nonprofits that can't truly address the systemic issues. So I was on the board of an organization called Girls Inc. of Delaware, which is a fantastic organization that serves girls statewide. But these girls are coming from some of the most under-resourced neighborhoods in our state. And while they can get fantastic services in our center, or if we go to their school, we're not reaching every girl who needs that help. And we're not doing anything to stop the next girl from having to come through the door, because we are not doing the work to ensure that her mom and dad have good wages and don't have to work multiple jobs to piece together a life. We're not changing the fact that her housing may be making her sick because there's mold and it's unsafe. We're not changing the fact that her school is underfunded or that they can't get health care. And all of these systemic issues are not going to be solved by nonprofit work. They simply aren't. They have to be government initiatives. And I am tired of representatives who are only committed to upholding this status quo and telling us that better things aren't better, or possible rather. And it has left us with a government that is completely inadequate in providing for its people. And that is what I'm running to change. I'm running to change who our government works for, so that we can actually guarantee a dignified standard of living for every single person and build that foundation that we can all use to jump off of to live good lives.
Right. I mean, this is a lot of great points you're making here, and to me, actually, this is something that I would love to see you saying to some of the Republicans in the Senate, because this is really what you're getting at is the conservative ideology, actually, where government will stay out of these things, and it's up to the private sector and these not-for-profit organizations to come on in and fill these holes in our safety nets and in our society, and provide as if they have some sort of never-ending money, to address what is really systemic issues. And that to hear you say that is refreshing, because the Democrats, who in many ways, there are some Democrats out there, not Coons, and we'll get to that shortly, but there are many Democrats out there who understand these things, but for some reason can't even voice it that way. And to me, like that's really the one of the first steps, if not the most important first step. It's really, to me, what a lot of these not-for-profit organizations, what their purpose really should be. It shouldn't really be to provide for where there are these holes in the system. It should be to raise awareness for where these holes are in the system, so then the government could step in and fill those gaps. So, I think you made some great points there. And someone like that needs to be there in our government to say these things.
And I want to build on a point that you kind of just touched on too, because I think that often members of the Democratic Party, whether it's because of an inability or an unwillingness, are really bad at communicating these things. And we are not good at getting on a message and delivering it over and over and pounding it into people until it just becomes accepted. And I think that we need people who are better capable of this and willing to do it, because that is how change actually happens. Like I recognize I'm running for a federal government seat, but I am of the mind that the change is always going to come from the bottom up. But what we have to do is have people who are able to echo and amplify that message that is going to continue to come from activists and organizers. And we have to have leaders that are actually amenable to that. Because right now we have so many people in our government who are so bought and paid for by corporate interests that they don't even have to be receptive to anything that is happening at the grassroots level on the ground back home. So It needs to be this combination of people who I believe are good communicators and are willing to be transparent and direct in their language. Like, just that is oddly something that people give me feedback on in a positive way. Like, oh, you just speak very directly about these things. And it's like, yes, that is what people are craving. They're craving someone to just be straight with them and be authentic and be a real human. And we get so little of that from the people who are just well-versed in talking points, and particularly talking points that come from their corporate lobbyists that deliver them to them and deliver the policy to them that they are then told to enact.
Now, it's so. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here, and I'll get back to some of the other stuff I plan on talking about. But you're bringing this somewhere I really want to go to right now, because it's the perfect segue here. You're saying this as someone who is running for a Senate seat in Delaware. I mean, for people who, to me, as someone who's a New York City born and bred, lived here my whole life. To me, Delaware is a state where I'm sure it's a great state, but I haven't really been there other than driving through. But I do know Delaware for its very famous, what it's known for, and that is as being this corporate safe haven. It's sort of become the one state where all, if you want to start a corporation and need a U.S. address, and the laws that are very beneficial to your corporation, just start a shell company in Delaware. Explain how it is running as someone saying these things in Delaware specifically. Have you had any blowback in terms of, I'm sure there's some very powerful forces who would like Delaware to remain as is, and I'm sure with you as a senator there, it would have a tougher time doing that.
Yeah, and I do want to hit on just setting the table here a little bit more for anybody who's not as well versed. Like, yes, Delaware is home, and I use that sort of in quotes, to 2/3 of the Fortune 500 companies. None of them operate here. They don't even have offices here, but they are incorporated here. And the reason that they're incorporated here is because of our business law and wanting to be able to use our court system if ever there is a challenge to something that they are doing. It's considered very friendly to the business. The other thing that is very popular here are credit card companies, and that is particularly because of our usury laws. And we have very lax usury laws. So if you have a credit card that is charging you 34% or whatever those incredibly high percentage rates are, that's because of Delaware. And this is why people should care about this race and this state. Exactly this, because what we have been doing with a platform for a federal office is also boosting down ballot progressives who are talking about these same things in our state, who are talking about not being funded by corporations, who are talking about actually legislating in favor of the working people of our state, not just the Chamber of Commerce. And there's a real opportunity to affect everyone's lives with changes in the state of Delaware, which is not hyperbole. Like, if we can elect enough people to our state legislature who are willing to take on these fights, we can actually change the way that corporations behave. So that being said, that's why it's incredibly important. But yeah, there are not people who want this to happen, certainly. I think I was expecting more difficulty or more attempts to sort of undercut me. I think my opponent's strategy has basically been to ignore us entirely.
Right.
I've heard rumors that they won't even say my name out loud. Like they're basically trying to pretend that this does not exist. He's refused to debate, even though multiple media organizations and other organizations have reached out. Student groups at the University of Delaware have reached out. They just say that there's not time. Yeah.
That one really irks me, actually, because of the people I've spoke to on this show so far, the ones who the challengers who tell me that yes, their incumbent reached out and they had a debate or two, like no matter what you think of that politician and their politics, to me, there's just I have even a minimal level of respect just for them doing that, because as someone who's in office, to me, your bare minimum job is to reach out and talk to your constituents, and if there's a race, you owe it to them to have a debate so they can then make sure that you are the best person for them. I mean, to not do that, it's just even a modicum of respect just goes out the window for me. I mean, I can't, it's just ridiculous.
It's dismissive of me, and it's dismissive of the voters. And I mean, even the largest paper in our state, particularly in Newcastle County, which is our most populous of our 3 counties, love to point out how small we are. He didn't even respond to the candidate questionnaire. So even just in print, responding to the 10 questions. So there's really a refusal to sort of be forward with their stances on the policies. We've even had people report to us that volunteers are outright lying about his stances on policies. Someone asked a volunteer, does Senator Coons support Medicare for all? And they said yes, which he is vehemently opposed to, has mocked it, has called it pie in the sky. Someone else asked or said they were disappointed that he confirmed Alex Azar as the head of Health and Human Services. And the volunteer said, oh, no, he voted against him because of his stance on this COVID thing. And it's like, either they are vastly underinformed and are unable to respond on these things and not getting any support to actually make responses, or they're outright telling lies to voters. And I think that if you can't run on the 10 years you've been in the Senate and the record that you have there, or your vision for the future, then you should not be running.
Right. Let's get into Chris Coons, because I want people to understand. You gave us a bit of a little hint about what we could expect, but let's really talk about who he is, because I don't think a lot of people know. I think maybe people who listen to this show who are on the left know who he is, but if anyone who, is just tuning in because it's a big presidential election year and they see Chris Coons as one of Joe Biden's buddies, then they might think that he's even maybe a current day where Joe Biden is current day, which he's not even.
He's not. No.
He's even to the right of Joe Biden. And it's, and I think people really need to understand this. In fact, this is someone who Politico has called the GOP's favorite Democrat. And when I say that, I don't mean, maybe back in the, when he first came into office in 2010, the political landscape was different then. Maybe they said that then. No, they said that during the last midterms, 2018, 2 years ago. This isn't a long time ago.
Right.
So tell us who Chris Coons is.
Yeah, and I think that point about him being to the right of Biden is incredibly important to call out, because Joe Biden is running on a $15 minimum wage. Chris Coons says $15 is too high. And what's interesting, when he talks about $15 being too high, he talks about it solely from the standpoint of employers. He literally is like, oh, that's too hard for small businesses. It's going to crush small businesses. Maybe corporations can pay $15 an hour. Maybe we could get a sliding scale. We could go to 10 and maybe go up to 12 over time. He has no care or concern about the life of a worker who is making minimum wage. And even in our state of Delaware, that's $9.25. But the housing wage in Delaware for a 1-bedroom rental is $18 an hour. So even 15 is too low for our state. Right. And he'll make comments about how it's too high, in places like rural Delaware. Okay, well, there's towns in rural Delaware where you need to be able to be making $30,000 a year to rent an apartment. So $15 is not too high anywhere. I think there's not a single housing wage, or maybe there's just one housing wage that's below $15 in the entire country. So that's a place where he's even to the right of Joe Biden. He does not even support a public option. So that's a place where he's to the right of Joe Biden. The Biden climate plan that came out of the Unity Task Force at least took into account the scale of the catastrophe that climate change will wreak on us. Senator Coons supports nothing more than a carbon tax and says that we can get to net zero by 2050. So for all of his talk about Trump needs to listen to science when we're talking about COVID and climate change, he himself is not listening to scientists, climate scientists who tell us we have 10 years. If you're shooting for 2050, you are completely out of step with where we need to be. And that carbon tax, by the way, he's willing to include a removal of regulations on emissions. So that his theory is that because they'll be paying, the emissions will be lower anyway. And these are the types of corporate-friendly policies that he is always putting forward. It fluctuates, but about second or third most amount of money from pharmaceutical companies. The first Democrat by far. He's only outpaced by like Mitch McConnell, basically, in taking pharmaceutical donations. And then he votes against bills put forward by Amy Klobuchar and Bernie Sanders to import drugs from Canada that would have lowered prices. He's put up a bill with Tom Tillis multiple times to actually make it easier for pharmaceutical companies to defend weak patents and maintain their profits and keep generics off the market. Like, who is this helping in the state of Delaware? When I'm getting calls from people who are unable to afford insulin and the medications that they need right now because they are on a fixed income and don't know what to do and are making decisions about buying food, how is it helping them? Right. He has taken hundreds of thousands of dollars from the National Chicken Council, which I know sounds very niche, but we are a state that has more chickens than people. There are chicken processing plants in the southern part of our state, and they are run by Mount Air Farms and Purdue. Mount Air, the CEO of Mount Air, is a huge donor to Donald Trump. He's also a huge donor to the National Chicken Council, as well as the family and the National Prayer Breakfast, which is another thing Coons is certainly to the right of Biden on. And when Mount Air has been poisoning people's wells, literally making it so they don't have clean drinking water, you hear nothing from the senator. He did nothing to stand up for them. Instead, what he has done is he has written bills and co-signed bills to make it so that Mount Air was exempt from having to report the air emissions from their plants, poisoning the air around Delawareans' homes, and they don't even have to report that. So this is someone who is constantly favoring their corporate donors over the needs of workers. There's an article that actually just came out today that talked about his willingness to give a liability waiver to corporations as part of COVID relief, which is breaking with Democratic leadership in the Senate, going against Chuck Schumer and the leadership to say, no, I would actually be for this. Well, in the article in Sludge, they point out that his second largest donor is Apollo Global Management, which is a massive private equity firm who is heavily invested in nursing homes who have led to the deaths of many people during COVID-19. So it would benefit and shield those nursing homes that are invested in by Apollo, that are invested in Senator Coons, from having to pay out any claims for the deaths that they are responsible for. So this is who he sides with over and over.
Right. I'm glad you brought up a number of things, but the Tillis bill sticks with me because it makes me think, and this goes back to how he was called the GOP's favorite Democrat. Again, I think a lot of people who just tune into politics and aren't in this political bubble where they're just consuming it all the time and really get all
which is most people.
Right. It is most exactly. I think to a lot of people, you hear, a Democrat who works with Republicans, compromise. So they assume in their heads, so Republican Democrats sit down at a table. They go, okay, you give me this and I'll be able to give you this. Oh, okay, that sounds fair. Handshake deal. No. That's not how it works. This is how it works when it comes to Republicans and Democrats compromising. Republican says, you will not get this, and this. You're going to give us that, and that, and you take it or leave it. And the Democrat goes, yes, sir, let's do it.
We had to get something done. We had to get something done, folks.
Exactly. That's the exact line, yes.
And they will stand there. And Senator Coons, if you were to watch his Coons speech and play a drinking game where you just drank every time he said bipartisanship, you would die. It's every other word with him. And it has become, it kind of gets back to what I'm actually going to kind of go back on what I said earlier. This is a point that he's been able to communicate and effectively get through the sort of zeitgeist, because you do hear people say like, well, how are you going to be bipartisan? How are you going to work across the aisle? And I'm like, here's the thing. Bipartisanship is not inherently good. It was bipartisan when we raised Trump's military budget, the most dangerous president, by $150 billion and gave him a space force and the border wall. It was bipartisan when we blocked importing drugs. It was bipartisan when the senator voted to roll back protections that were put in place with Dodd-Frank to protect us after the Great Recession. All of these are bipartisan actions. Were they good for people? Did you get something done? Sure. But the problem with bipartisanship is the people who are most impacted by this legislation are never in the room. They are never the ones helping make this decision. You're never even bringing them in with you and in their stories and with you, because you're not even connected to them. So they will shake hands and they'll be so glad that they came to a bipartisan decision without any care about the impact of that legislation on the working people of our country. It's solely about this idea that we got along. And they try to push that as what the Congress should be. They try to push this idea that the American people just want Congress to get along. And they don't. What they want is a government that functions. They want a government that lifts them up and takes care of them, that does not leave them to die in the middle of a pandemic. And that's not just about getting along. So my stance on bipartisanship is, yes, if there's a Republican who wants to work with me on a bill that actually lifts up the working people of my state and their state, then absolutely, let's have that conversation. But otherwise, I'm going to do everything I can to defeat them and replace them.
Right. In fact, if I remember correctly, I was looking over some of those some bills where they were bipartisan. They were bipartisan, support. And Coons had one stuck out to me. Chris Coons voted against that bipartisan bill to take us out of the war in Yemen. This was a bill that Bernie Sanders and Rand Paul got together for. I mean, if it doesn't get any more bipartisan than that. But Chris Coons didn't want to do that one. But you said
he is always a yes vote for any sort of increase of war, defense spending. I mean, last fall, he was out the moment that the Saudi oil fields were attacked. He was on Fox News advocating for war with Iran, saying if this is proven to be Iran, this might be a reason for us to get involved. I mean, he is always the first to champion war. He just voted against the 10% decrease that would have put that money from the military budget into an actual response for the American people in the middle of a pandemic. He was opposed to that. Yeah, he's always a yes vote for anything that increases the military industrial complex.
Right. You said it before, and this is the mantra of the centrist or right-wing Democrat. It is the get things done. Never a description of what things are. No. It's just something needs to be done. Okay, well, you know what? If that something is bad, I'd honestly rather
you would not do that.
Yeah, I'd prefer you do nothing. I'd literally prefer the Senate goes in there and twiddles their thumbs and do nothing for an entire term, and just we'll figure it out when we vote in new senators, because that is better than you doing something which ends up being a bad thing.
Yeah. And another place where he has been willing to be bipartisan was in 2014. He caved to the pressure from the Fraternal Order of Police and voted down Obama's nominee for the Department of Civil Rights within the Department of Justice. And that was bipartisan.
Right.
And he's been bipartisan in helping Trump put hundreds of judges on the court. I mean, this one really angers me, frankly, because all Mitch McConnell and Republicans have wanted to use the Senate to do is to take over the judiciary. This is a stated goal. They don't want to legislate. They want to be obstructionist, except when it comes to appointees. So knowing that, and knowing, again, Trump's the most dangerous president in the world. You tell us all the time. Every mailer Chris Coons is sending is about how he's standing up to Donald Trump because he's so dangerous. But then you vote to confirm over 120 of those same judges. Extremely young, Federalist Society, extreme views, won't confirm civil rights, won't confirm women's rights, won't confirm that Brown versus Board of Education is just rightly decided. And these are votes that you are giving to the Republicans. And to your point earlier, what have we gotten back? If you are putting money in the bank so that they'll pay you back at some point, maybe when dozens and hundreds and thousands of people were about to be evicted and eviction protections were about to end and unemployment added benefits are about to end, maybe that would have been a good time for you to cash in some of those chips that you have with Republicans. But where were you on that?
Right. That really is a great point. Even if well, it's obviously not the real strategy, but even if you voice your strategy is, we have to, we take it on the chin here because we're saving up we're building up for when we really need to, throw down the chips and call in the favor or whatever. But they never do that. There's never the turnaround. There's never the switch. There's never, okay, we've been scratching your back, now you scratch ours. It's always, how do we make these corporations happy? How do we make the Republicans happy? It's never the other way around. And to your point about all the judges Chris Coons has helped Trump put through, that is an excellent point. And to me, one of the ways Coons helped Trump that I focus on, not as important as the judges, but from a talking point standpoint, really, especially with that group of people who are just tuning in because they hate Trump and it's a big election year. Coons was the guy who changed his vote to present when they were voting to make Mike Pompeo Secretary of State. If it wasn't for Chris Coons, Mike Pompeo wouldn't have been confirmed. They didn't have the votes.
He'll argue that it just would have been delayed.
So delay
He'll
it.
argue
Delay it.
Exactly. Then delay it. And
why are you helping them out? Make it hard for them.
Using that as a story of how he helped out his friend, I believe it was Johnny Isakson, and how it brought Bob Corker to tears because it was such a kind thing to do. But we're talking about Mike Pompeo, who he then voted against. I want to be clear. He did not actually vote to confirm him. But when have we ever seen that reciprocated?
Right.
I can't point to it.
Right.
And he, really, another one that I talk about is the handling of the Kavanaugh hearings, where he, again, loves to pat himself on the back and loves to tell the story in a way that makes him seem like a hero. But to another point, they didn't have the votes. They were not sure that they could get him out of that committee. And what Chris Coons and Jeff Flake did was arrange a sham FBI investigation that did not even follow up on all the leads. Chris Coons actually was informed of a third complaint that he passed the FBI, but when he knew that they didn't follow up on it, he did not go public with it. And he stood by while this sham FBI investigation went on and gave cover to all of the Republicans to now vote yes. So these are the ways that he makes working together try to seem effective. Like, look, the Congress is getting things done. I'm trying to stop this. So let me get an FBI investigation that has the tightest barriers on it to even be a real investigation. But hey, I worked together and I got this done for you. And now we're going to get to the bottom of this. No, we're not. We're not going to get to the bottom of anything. It's a fig leaf. And now everyone can feel good voting out of committee to put him in front of the Senate.
Right. So let's move back. I think we've really established who Chris Coons is. So I want to move this conversation back to you and your candidacy. Say you are, you beat Chris Coons, you get elected. What would be your what would be the signature piece of legislation or item you'd go after? Like, how, for example, AOC is known for the Green New Deal. What would be something that you would prioritize on, day one?
I'm going to give you two answers, which I know is not what you want, but
perfect.
I mean, the thing that I hear the most from people is about healthcare. People recognize that this barbaric system is completely unnecessary and needs to be changed. And we don't even really need to explain to people what Medicare for All is. And that's something that has completely shifted in the last 4 or 5 years. Is people have the language to talk about this. They have the confidence to be credulous about the system that we have now and to call it into question. So absolutely signing on to be a sponsor of Medicare for All, particularly the Jayapal bill. However, the thing that I really care incredibly deeply about and think needs to be the next thing alongside Medicare for All and a Green New Deal is guaranteed housing. And I kind of touched on housing in a little earlier, but people in our state are suffering through an affordable housing crisis. And I think it gets talked about a lot when it comes to big cities like New York and Seattle and LA. but we do not hear it enough about smaller towns and suburban areas, but it's real there too. So for every about 100 people that are looking for affordable housing in our state, there's only about 35 units available. So that means about 2/3 of people are rent burdened or unable to find housing that they can actually afford. And we have large numbers of homelessness because of that, or housing instability because of that. And we have quite a few houses that are in complete disrepair that landlords fail to care for, that literally make people sick, make children sick. There's mold growing in them that causes asthma in children, that causes health effects. So I really look at how healthcare and housing and frankly, the environment as well are all really interconnected. And I think we have not talked enough about the housing piece. Like I think Medicare for All and the Green New Deal have really become top of mind for people. And those are incredibly important and also pieces of legislation that I would absolutely, well, Green New Deal is a proposal, but to fight to get the legislation we need. But I think guaranteed housing, increasing our investments in federal housing, repealing the Faircloth Amendment, which limits the amount of housing public housing we can actually build. These are things I absolutely want to focus on and champion.
Now it's interesting that you bring up the housing crisis, because it really melds into my next question here. When you declared your candidacy, I believe it was November of 2019, right? That's when you declared. Now, a lot has changed since then. And I don't even mean from November to, almost a year later. I'm talking about November to just a handful of months later. There was no coronavirus pandemic that literally changed every fabric of our everyday lives in society. So before we get into the housing section of that, I want to just ask you, how did you change your campaign when the coronavirus hit? Because I'm sure it affected how you were able to, one of the things that progressives have over a centrist or an incumbent when it comes to these sort of races is they usually have the volunteer apparatus and who have experience with grassroots activism, knocking on doors, hitting the streets. How did you have to alter the campaign?
Yeah, so I'd say that our strategy didn't necessarily change, but our tactics did. Because our strategy from the beginning was to bring our message directly to people, put it in front of them, and hear directly from them what resonates and what we should be focused on. The way we were doing that was going door to door. And we had a goal of knocking the most doors of any campaign in the state of Delaware, which is possible, right? Again, I'm going to hit on again. We're very small. You can get to every voter here. And we had knocked, more than 25,000 doors before we had to shut down.
I'm not sure if you answered this one before. How many votes is a winning, the last Senate race? How many votes did the winner of that race?
About 50,000, somewhere in that range.
Wow, that's doable. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely doable. And that was our goal, was let's get the ground game up and running. The first week of the campaign, the first day we were phone banking, text banking. The first week we were canvassing. And we had people, canvassing in the middle of winter, dozens of people showing up. The day that we shut down canvassing, I believe it was March 14th, we had 25 people ready to go out and knock doors. So it certainly hit us in the tool that we wanted to use and took it away from us.
Right.
But to your point about these grassroots campaigns having a good volunteer network, we had volunteers that stayed engaged, and we were able to direct their energy instead to the phones, to texting. And we started digital spend earlier than maybe we would have otherwise. And in a lot of ways, I'm incredibly grateful that we were running this campaign during this pandemic, because we turned our phone banking operation into a mutual aid and outreach operation. So before we had any conversation about what we were running on, we had a conversation about, are you okay right now? And if that person wasn't, we abandoned any sort of political script, and we said instead, what resources can we connect you to? Right. So I'm incredibly grateful that we were there doing that, because that meant we were able to connect people to food, to supplies, a whole lot of people that were unable to get unemployment claims processed for months, that we were able to get them through for them, emergency housing. All of the things that people needed, we were able to at least try to help connect them to. And I was glad that we were able to do that work. But it certainly it took away the thing that we wanted the most, which was that face-to-face contact.
Right.
So what we tried to replace that with is screen-based face-to-face contact. So I started doing a Facebook Live every Monday evening, 7:30 to 8:30. I would just get on and anybody could ask any question and it's just me and I'll answer them however, what aligns with my values and my views and what I'm running on. We also use that same platform to bring on some of those down ballot candidates that I'm talking about we were supporting to sort of give them a broader platform as well and bring in, people who may be supporting them to my platform and support each other through this. And we tried to get creative with fundraising as well. I think, trying to break through there, we really leaned into using Twitch, actually. We did a thing where as a team, we learned how to play Dungeons and Dragons. We have one person who knew what they were doing and the rest of us sort of found our way. And we used that as a fundraiser where people could, either punish us by donating certain amounts of money or reward us by donating certain amounts of money, and kind of created interesting ways to fundraise digitally there since we weren't going to be able to do in-person fundraising and meet and greet events. And I think it still has worked for us. We were able, like I said, we increased the digital spend and we're able to get ads in front of people that way. We have now gotten back to canvassing, and I've heard from people like, oh, I saw this on social, or I saw this ad, or now we do have a TV ad running, so people have seen that. We were able to raise enough money to do that and to get mailers out. So we went to some of the kind of more traditional tools, I think, but I think pairing that with a really strong digital and social media brand in some ways. I hate saying that, but like leaning into that and sort of just being like, people want authenticity, so we're going to give it to them anyway, and we're going to just do it even more than we may have if we were canvassing every week. I think that it's been still a winning formula for us, and I think we've been able to still break through and get the name ID that we need to be competitive and win this race.
Right. I didn't realize this actually until I was just looking it up to talk with you. I assumed just because of how late in the year the Delaware primary is, I assumed it was one of the many states that had it pushed back due to the coronavirus. But that's not the case. It was only September 15th, which is insane to me because that's so far away from when all the other primaries were scheduled. And in a way, when I've spoken to other people about this, I've said how, I'm someone who tries to look on the bright side of things, try to make the best of whatever happens. So, one of the interesting things that came out of the pandemic is that, it was nice to see the primaries also spread apart. You didn't have like a dozen, like obviously they were still that early on, like March, but like as it got later on in April, May, June, July, the primaries got really spread apart as different states pushed theirs back. And I feel like in many ways it helped with progressives because a lot of progressive candidates have progressives from all over the country all focus on one campaign. And now when you have 5 states all working towards the same election day, you split those progressives all over the state who want to help up into different, they try to determine who will best benefit from my help. Whereas I saw this year, everyone was able to go from basically one race to another and just help out.
Yeah.
I mean, I know now that this was always so far away, but have you noticed that the extension of the primary for all the other states sort of helped build momentum going into the Delaware primary, whereas previously it was going to be just like a lull during the summer, nothing going on, and then bam, Delaware primary.
Right. No, absolutely. And it's funny because I hold the counter view when it comes to the presidential primary. I don't like that they're all spread out. I think it should just want that all to be done on one day.
Right.
But for these statewide races, no, I think it's very valuable. And it is, if it were to change, I think it would be harder for progressive candidates or just insurgent candidates in general to break through. Because we have definitely seen that where there was kind of a few that hit in April. And then once those volunteers are freed up, they go looking for the next thing to do. And I will give credit to my team right now. They were like always on it after every race, being like, getting out there and virtual canvassing and like bringing people in and recruiting volunteers. And you could see how people did sort of move from like one race to the next. And I love it in our Slack when like people recognize each other from former campaigns. So they're like, oh yeah, we were on Jen's campaign and we were on Michaela's campaign. We were on Jamal's. Like, so that's really cool that I feel like we are now like the last stop on the progressive train for a whole lot of people. And it is something that I think is beneficial for us because people have a lot of energy, particularly after some of the really great wins that we did get this summer, that they want to put into getting another. And we've been lucky to capture that energy and harness it into our own volunteer network.
Is it always that late in Delaware?
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah.
a reason for that? It sounds like something that the establishment candidates would put together specifically for some sort of certain, like for a specific reason in mind. But who knows?
Yeah, I honestly don't know historically how it got there. I know that there's been talk about changing it. I think because we maybe get like dinged by the DNC or something. There's like weird DNC rules about when your primary is supposed to be. But I think every time it comes up to change it, the people who hold office don't want to change it because they don't want to mess with kind of their own cycle. But I do think it's beneficial to us.
Right.
It also, the one thing that is a little strange though, is that for candidates who face a primary and are trying to, say, flip a seat, I think that's tough because now you're less than 60 days from your general election. So if you're facing, let's say we have a Republican held seat downstate that we want to try to target and flip. If we face a primary and we have to put the energy into that and then transition to general, you really don't have a ton of time to do that.
Right.
So that is the one drawback that I think it sort of assumes that seats aren't flipping. It's just like either an incumbent is sitting in it and they're not being challenged and they're going to get challenged from the other side and maybe that they're not going to really have to worry about losing it, or it does make it kind of harder to transition from a primary to a general election. It feels like they're just assuming that once you win the primary, you've won the seat.
Right. So, I forgot to bring this up because I said I would come back to it. And then, this will be the last thing to really discuss for now. You talked about a housing crisis in Delaware. How is obviously we're seeing this all over the country. The coronavirus has turned it into an even bigger crisis than it already is. What has been your experience in terms of, did you feel like your belief in that being a major, crisis point that needs to be dealt with? Did you find that, it was even bigger than you expected, or did the coronavirus already turn it into something larger? What is your feelings on the coronavirus's effects, I should say, on this already existing crisis in terms of, because in New York, we're literally 21 days away from the moratorium on evictions being lifted. And then will it be extended by Governor Cuomo? Who knows? But how long will he extend it for? You think if they really cared about this, there would be an out for people, not just pushing off the inevitable for eternity.
Exactly. Yeah. I think this stands for housing as well as job security, wages, benefits, paid leave, sick leave. All of these things were issues before this hit. And this has only just been an accelerant on all of these problems that were already baked into our society and our economy. And one thing, if you want to try to find a silver lining here, is that I think it really pulled back the curtain for a lot of people who maybe didn't see how millions of people in our country are living.
Right.
And I hope that we can harness that and really focus on not talking about getting back to quote unquote normal, because normal was so dramatically failing millions of people that is why people were immediately in a position where they had no money. Their rent was unable to be paid by missing one paycheck.
Right.
And we weren't able to fill that gap for them fast enough because our states weren't able to deliver on unemployment checks fast enough. And we also are a state that now the eviction moratorium has been lifted already. They are trying to direct people to like arbitration and mediation, but ultimately people don't have representation. They can't afford to have representation, which is something I also support, like actually requiring that if people are going through civil court, particularly eviction court, that they are given representation. We know people are going to end up out of their houses. We know that there were people already lining up to evict people. I spoke to one woman, though, and it really resonated with me, where she was grateful for the pandemic hitting because that eviction moratorium went into place and it stopped her eviction from happening because it was already coming. And when you hear that, where this woman she feels horrible saying it because she knows people are losing their lives. But for her very precarious situation, it helped her. And I think the fact that we are forcing people to live in those very precarious situations is exactly the problem that we should be focused on. And we should not be saying, we just have to patch over this and like hope we get past this. We have to say, how do we make ourselves stronger and more resilient? Because this is coming again. It's either going to be a pandemic unleashed by the fact that climate change is affecting these viruses and these bacteria that are unleashed on us. It's going to be another storm. It's going to be fires that displace people and destroy their lives. Like, so many people are living so close to ruin that one setback destroys them. Right. And when we have a setback at this scale, it destroys millions of people. And that needs to be a real moment for us to say, how do we prevent this from happening again? I know that a lot of people on the left are having that conversation. I know that a lot of people that are experiencing it are having that conversation. And we have to find ways to tell people that we can do better than this and encourage them to raise their expectations and demand more, because they have been beaten down for generations.
Right.
People's expectations of what government can do for them they're gone. They expect nothing. And why would they? Again, we are in a global crisis. And even now, we can't get the support we need. We told people we're going to shut down, but we didn't do anything to actually allow them to stay home. We told some people, particularly Black and brown minimum wage workers, that they had to keep going to work. We told people who lost their jobs that, okay, we'll give you some added unemployment benefits, but you're not going to be able to get them for 3 months because your state is running on a computer system that's 40 years old. So these are the way that we are treating people. We need to change the fact that people don't expect anything. We have to encourage them to expect more and demand it. And we need to elect people that are actually going to respond to those demands.
Right. I mean, you brought up before about how the financial crisis affected you as a mid-30-year-old, say being a mid-30-year-old millennial, as someone who's like, I think I'm like a year or two younger than you, graduated into the recession. And one thing I noticed looking back is that, there was no progressive or leftist infrastructure there that, in 2008, there was no insurgent progressive or leftist campaigns trying to get in politicians who cared about helping people who were affected by truly help those people, not just, do what the Obama administration ended up doing. But, and this time, though, I want people to understand we are in a crisis again, a much worse crisis with the coronavirus pandemic, but we have an infrastructure to elect politicians who actually care and can do things and want to do things that can help people. And I mentioned a dozen before candidates who have gone on to winning primaries. And ladies and gentlemen, we have a chance again right here, the last chance to get someone, another progressive win, and not just another progressive win, but the first progressive Senate challenger win with Jess Scarane. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Let people know where they can check you out, find you online, sign up to volunteer in these last few days. Put it all out there.
Yeah. So best place to start is my website, justfordelaware.com. Please volunteer. Like, phone banking is incredibly valuable to us. We have already made something like 750,000 calls, but we are trying to make a few 100,000 more in these final days to get out the vote. And if we, again, going back to the size of Delaware, it takes basically 50 people on the dialer for 3 hours every day. And we are targeting 5:30 to 8:30 every day as our big slot. And that's Eastern time, to be clear, as our big slot for people to join. But you can phone bank at any time between 10 a.m. and 9 p.m. And it's incredibly valuable. We have people who are maybe still have their mail-in ballot in hand and are going to drop it off or get it in the mail in these next couple of days. And we have people who are going to vote in person and need that final push and that final reason to vote for us and vote for fighting for themselves and to fight alongside of us, because that's the message of our campaign too, is that it's not just about electing me. It's about electing me and then continuing to fight and then getting the next person in and then building on this both at our state level here in Delaware and then nationally. So justfordelaware.com, please sign up to volunteer. If you're able to donate we need fuel to continue getting through Election Day on Tuesday. So that helps us make those dials, send those texts, keep our ads up, make sure people see us, who these people who are making their decision in the final days. And yeah, I'm on social everywhere, Jess for Delaware, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Please help us win, because we know what this is in reach. We know that we've got people running scared. I know I'm out there on doors every day again and on the phones every day, and I know there is support there. And it's just a matter of shaking these last few people loose and getting them out to the polls on Tuesday.
Jess, thanks so much. Take care and good luck. Have a great night.
Yeah, thanks so much, Matt.
Bye. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Bloop, bloop. Put me back up here on the screen. All right, I wanted to, I'm so glad that she came on tonight, because after the show last week, which was very heavy, I wanted to give people a little bit of hope on this show called Doomed. I think she has a real chance, and if you have the time and want to do something, for sure, donate your time to help phone bank and volunteer for Jess. It's a very important race for a crucial seat, if no other reason than it being Joe Biden's seat. There are many other reasons, like we just went through, we spent an hour going through. But if to you the number one reason is revenge, then there's no better. There'll be no sweeter taste than having a progressive beat Joe Biden's buddy for Joe Biden's old seat. And then you can feel good if you feel like you got to vote for Joe Biden in November, if you're not in your swing state or something. All right, I'll vote for you, Joe Biden, but only because a progressive is now going to sit in your Senate seat. All right, let's go to the patron-only half of the show, folks. Patreon.com/MattBinder. If you have extra change after donating to Jess's campaign, go to patreon.com/MattBinder. Support this show. Help it grow. We're at an all-time high of patrons. Still lower than a lot of others, but, for this show, it's a personal record. So patreon.com/MattBinder. Follow me all over social media at MattBinder, or search Matt Binder. YouTube.com/MattBinder. If you're watching right now and want your questions or comments read for the second half of the show, jump in the live chat, I should say, at youtube.com/MattBinder, and drop a super chat in the chat room, and I will assuredly 100% read your question or comment. What else? Doomedpod.com if you're a podcast listener and want to catch this show just as audio. You can also find the show at iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you listen to podcasts. What else? I feel like I'm forgetting something. I feel like I always forget something. Yeah. So we're going to the second half of the show, patron-only half. For everyone else, I co-hosted the Majority Report today with the Majority Report crew. Thursday crew, I should say. So go check that out if you haven't already. Otherwise, see you all next time on Doomed. All right, we are back for the second half of the show. How you all doing today, ladies and gentlemen? How are you all doing? Let's get to... I saw a few super chats early on, just a handful. Let me get to those first so I don't forget. And then I'll get to any others that come in as they come in. Midnight Pizza Man says, Matt, Nancy Pelosi, Binder, no longer all elite. Well, I'm not sure why I'm no longer all elite, but for those who don't know, last week on the Majority Report, when I co-hosted last week too with Jamie Peck, Matt Leck, and Brendan Finn, and we were talking about that story where Nancy Pelosi went to a salon during the when apparently this place was supposed to be closed, and I saw it for what it was. It was a right-wing hit job. And I don't care who the Democrat is. I have plenty to knock Nancy Pelosi for. I have an endless list of things where I can criticize Nancy Pelosi, and I hope she loses her House seat and she's out of politics, or at least electoral as an elected official at the very least, because I'm sure she'll always have a role somewhat. That'd be great. But I will never, ever use a right-wing hit job to attack anyone, to be quite honest. It is the most... I'm not going to give any sort of right-wing attack more legs, because it's usually disingenuous. And quite frankly, I think it takes away from actual real criticism we have, which there's plenty of for a lot of these establishment and centrist Democrats. I'm not going to indulge a attack that basically she was told by a stylist that she goes to that she could come in and that it was okay. And she gets her hair done. And the owner of the building, not her stylist pays the owner of the building to rent a chair. But the owner of the building then took a screenshot of the security camera and tried to shame Nancy Pelosi and used it as a fundraising mechanism to make money off of right-wing people, because she went over on Fox News and all sorts. Yeah, I'm not gonna indulge that. I'm sorry. That's not for me. Plenty of things to go after Nancy Pelosi for. That's not one of them. I mean, you could knock her for... I thought her response was terrible when the media asked her about it. But that's not even close to what the criticism is focused on, which is her going to a hair salon when the person who works at the salon told her she can go. I mean, what are you supposed to do? You ask someone who rents... You go to a restaurant and you say... Are you allowed to be open? The restaurant says, yes, I'm allowed to be open. And then you find out that the owner of the building said that, no, the restaurant couldn't open. It's your fault after the restaurant told you? No, that's not for me. But yes, now everyone says I love Nancy Pelosi. I'm the Nancy Pelosi lover. Right. You know me. Nancy Pelosi. That's me. Someone's going to clip that, and it's going to just be me going, Nancy Pelosi. Samantha Sider says, with a super chat, I don't know why I read your full name. I'm sorry, Samantha, if you don't want your full name being read, but it is in the YouTube chat. And I'm sure there's more friendly people actually dedicated to listening to the show than who would probably come across it in a YouTube super chat, live chat, I should say. Samantha says, loved that interview. Let's win her that seat. Absolutely. She was great. I mean, I told her, I told her I would take a lot less of her time, and I ended up taking a lot more of her time, which I feel like is how most of these interviews go in this show, actually. But I'm so glad that she came on and took the time just days before her big election day. Oh man, there's so many things to talk about in the news, and oh no, now everyone's oh no. Well, Shadrick says you are right about this, Matt. Thank you. I appreciate that. Everyone else is going. Zoe's going. What is it? UWU Mommy Pelosi. Umar says Nancy Pelosi is hot. Silicon Baby says I'm calling the horny police. Salami Mommy says LMAO, you know we clippin'. Right. Oh wait, Samantha Sider says no problem on saying the name. It's a spoof name on Sam Cedar, so it made me smile. I actually never realized that. I just thought your name was Samantha Sider. Sam Cedar, Samantha Sider. How did I not catch that? Clever. And Samantha, Matt Binder thinks Pelosi is a MILF. Okay. We've officially gone too far. Now I'm done. Champagne Kami says, I love Matt's Nancy Pelosi feminism. Oh, this is going to be a thing that will be on my tombstone, right? It'll go with me to the grave, won't it? I'll take it with me to the grave. That's the saying, right? Oh, boy. Champagne Kami with a super chat. Have you ever tried the energy coffee drinks, such as the Monster Java or others? Great job on MR today. It's getting better and better. Thank you, Champagne Kami. I have not tried the energy coffee drinks, and that's because this might surprise you as someone who drinks lots of soda and energy drinks. I'm not a big coffee person. Not a big fan of hot drinks, I guess. I'm more of a cold drink guy. Drinks should be refreshing, right? Drinks need to quench your thirst, right? That's not what coffee does for me. So, not a big hot drink guy. All right. Okay, so there's a lot of stories I want to talk about. Now I can't think of any of them because I've been sidetracked by my Nancy Pelosi love fest here. JH says, if you haven't hit that like button, you love John Bolton. Absolutely. Hit that like button on YouTube. All right. So this, I mean, we talked about the majority report, but let me talk about this a little bit more for the audience here. And I didn't clip it because you've all probably heard about it by now, but I want to discuss it a little bit. So Bob Woodward, journalist Bob Woodward, for his upcoming book, dropped this bombshell audio piece where basically back in February, he spoke with President Donald Trump, just in case you need a reminder of who the president is currently, where Trump goes on about just how dangerous the coronavirus. Remember, this is early February now. He's going on about how dangerous he's heard the coronavirus is. He talks about how it has a really high fatality rate. I think it was something like 5%, he said. And this one was big for reasons we'll get into. He said how it's much more dangerous than the flu. And he goes on about how, this is some tough stuff, heavy stuff, and, he's hearing all about it, and it's going to be bad. And Bob Woodward releases this, and we'll get to the criticism about Woodward in a second, but Bob Woodward releases this, and we know now what Trump said after he would have talked to Bob Woodward and said these things. Just literally a few weeks later, he would go on to downplay the coronavirus outbreak numerous times. One of the things the right harps on is because they heard it from Trump over and over again. It's just how many people, tens of thousands of people, die every year from the flu. So, this thing, the coronavirus, which at the time was just a couple dozen deaths, I think, in the States, We know now that obviously it took 6 months for the U.S. to witness almost 200,000 deaths due to the coronavirus. So much for not being bad as the 30,000 deaths for a whole year of the common flu. So, I mean, we know, and it shouldn't be, and a lot of people, I think, thought there was some sort of bombshell. And, I mean, if he released it after the first time Trump said this, I don't even think it would have been that big of a bombshell because we know who Trump is. We know he's a liar. We know, this is a guy who will say something publicly and then a few days later refute what he just said publicly a couple days earlier, but also claim he never said what he said earlier. He just doesn't care, and his base doesn't care. And to be quite frank, because so many people don't care, people who don't even really have skin in the game and don't really think one way or another probably think, it's not that big of a deal because they see it's not that big of a deal from others. I don't, and unfortunately, because of that vicious cycle, I think it would not be that big of a deal. It's the truth, though. I do think, though, I'm not someone who's going to say, though, that this doesn't matter, because it does. I do think, though, that it should have been released then. Because of anything, even if no one cared, it speaks to the profession that's supposed to be really holding these politicians' feet to the fire. How do you, as a journalist, hold this information for your book that's coming out months and months later? How? This isn't some side story that's not relevant to current day that you could hold on to, some personal nugget from a president that you can divulge at a later time. No. This was information about a pandemic, an ongoing pandemic. And then of course, this happened just earlier today, where Trump is now hitting Bob Woodward for that. And I wish I grabbed that, actually, because what Trump is saying is stunning. Let me actually I'm not going to be able to pull the clip because it's going to take too long, but this is truly stunning. Trump is saying that when they were asking, so the press today was asking Trump, how can you go out and say those things to the public about coronavirus when just weeks earlier you are now caught on camera as saying, on audio as saying, that you understood fully how dangerous this was for the American people. So how could you go over and downplay it to them, which ostensibly probably got people sick because they listened to the president say it was no big deal. They didn't take it seriously, even though the president knew it was a big deal. And surely at least a few people died because of the president, a lot more than a few. But even if you were a skeptic that it's Trump's fault, surely a few people at the very least died because of President Trump. Again, I think it's a lot more, and I think it's reasonable to say it's a lot more, especially when you compare the rate to other countries. But so Trump said something earlier, a couple of days ago. Before I get to what he said today, actually, a couple of days ago, he was going on about how he didn't want people. What was this? Yesterday, actually, he didn't want people caught up in a frenzy. He didn't want to make the American people panic. This is a guy who literally has built an entire political career out of creating mass frenzy and panic. I mean, I think it was Matt Leck earlier on in the Majority Report who pointed out maybe the only thing he has downplayed and didn't want to cause panic in is the financial sector, like the stock market. Everything else, he has been full speed ahead in trying to create as much division and frenzy and panic. Racial issues, culture issues, class issues. I mean, this is the panic president, really. Poor people are seeking into your suburban American dream. Mexican rapists are pouring over the borders into your small town. Antifa is on the way to your home to burn it down. I mean, this is the panic president. So give me a break that's your reasoning. But then just a few hours ago, he goes out there, and the press is still asking him about this, and he says, if it was so bad, why didn't Bob Woodward go out and tell people it was so bad after Trump told him it was so bad so he could save those people? He's literally saying that I told Bob Woodward my feelings. And if Bob Woodward thought it was important to tell people, then he should have. And those deaths are on him for not doing so. It's just a stunning thought process there. The logic behind that is just amazing. That if you released those secret recordings of me, where I told you the truth, but not the people publicly, if you released those secret recordings, more people would have lived. Therefore, it is your fault for not releasing what I didn't want to say publicly. It's just every day this guy finds a new thing to shock me with. And very little that surprises others about him surprised me because I've seen it. The lying doesn't surprise me. The tone that people obsess over doesn't surprise me. But there's these new things that come out that really always is just like, wow. It doesn't. He's a narcissist, so it doesn't shock me he would try to pass the blame on someone. It's how he's logically working like this into making sense to him. Like imagine the brain process going on there, where I don't want to tell people this publicly, so I tell you something in private. You recorded this. If it was so important, it's on you, not me, for it to get out there. My mind is just broken from thinking about that thought process there. Jeez. Let's go back to the comments where people are still going on about Nancy Pelosi. Oh, no, please. Enough. No more Nancy. No more Nancy Pelosi. Where was this super chat? Don't want to lose it. Here we go. Mariah with the super chat. Hi, Maddie. MR was great today, and I am loving the Misinfo newsletter. Oh, that's what I forgot to promote on the first half of the show. Okay, I knew it. I knew there was something I was missing. Oh, well. I'm about to evacuate from the Oregon fires, 10 minutes from Portland City Center. Oh, are you, Mariah? Mariah, can you, and I know you're probably busy right now as you tell me you're evacuating. But would you be able to call into this program right now? Do you have Skype on your computer or your phone? Just a few minutes. I don't want you to, I mean, if you got to leave right now, like life and death situation, you shouldn't be telling me this via the chat. Just get to safety, please. But if not, if you're okay, can you call in right now? If you can, hold on, I'm going to log into the public Skype for calls. Doomed Live on Skype. Just go there, Doomed Live on Skype. One word, Doomed Live. And again, I don't want to hear Mariah was trapped in an inferno because she took the extra 5 minutes to call into a YouTube stream. So if that's the case, do not call the show. But if you can, Doomed Live. Zoe says, "Oh, it's Mariah. Can you I'm going to give you a ring, Mariah. Can I give you a ring?" Oh, she's calling me. Look at that. Hello?
Oh my gosh.
Oh, hi Mariah. How you doing? You're on the air.
Wow, this is so exciting.
This is the first time you've called in, and you're like a regular in the chat, right? You're the first time you're calling in.
Yeah, I've been listening since February, and I'm kind of like a religious listener. And I only recently got into watching The Majority Report, so I'm getting like extra Matt Bender these days.
I love it. I also love that there are people who find this show before The Majority Report. That is always shocking to me. But really quick, how did that happen? How did you find me before The Majority Report? How did you find
I think I found you because of your Bolivia coverage about the Twitter bots.
Right.
Because I was following a lot of like Venezuela, Bolivia, like no coup accounts. And so I think I found you through that. But then I think it's just a testament to the fact that the YouTube algorithm like favors the right wing because I don't know anyone who watches The Majority Report.
Right. I mean, to me, it's crazy because this show now has 5,000 subscribers on YouTube. And the Majority Report has 935,000 subscribers on YouTube. So to find this show before the Majority Report, always stunning to me. But there's quite a few of you, actually. So it's always interesting to hear how that happened. Not the most important thing in the world. Enough about me. You are calling from Oregon. What's going on there? You said you're about to evacuate? Tell me what's happening.
Yeah, so technically my house is still in the green zone. My entire county is in a state of emergency. There are 15 fires burning actively. It's something like 300,000 acres have already burned. And so my house is still in the get ready zone for evacuation. So it's like technically we don't have to go anywhere yet. And we are still several miles from the nearest fire. But my best friends who live like 10 minutes south of me just evacuated. So like the fire, there's like, I don't know exactly how they're determining like how far away people need to be
Right.
in order for them to like call for an evacuation, but
Right.
I've been getting like text like those scary like emergency alerts on my phone all day for different areas evacuating. So I have like a go bag ready. I have my dog's go bag ready. My mom is with me as well, and yeah, it's very scary.
Well, I'm assuming they know where the fire is going. Based, they just need to track the roving bands of Antifa and where they're headed, and then based on that, they're able to fill in the gaps and say, it'll take Antifa at least 2 hours to get to this part of Oregon. That's where it's safest to be. That's my assumption. But have you seen any Antifa arsonists creating wildfires?
No, I have not. I have not. I wish that we had Antifa, super soldiers fighting fires. That'd be great.
Right.
But we just have. I don't know if you saw this today, but we have militia guarding. Maybe I heard it from you. I don't remember. But we have militia down in these small towns in my county, guarding, like businesses and stuff, like watching out for Antifa, and they like scream. There's some one of the journalists who's been covering the Portland protests. His name is Sergio. He's like Mexican, and was with like a couple of other people of color, and these militiamen like told them, get the fuck out of here, like what are you doing here, like stop taking pictures. They were armed. They like trained their weapons on them.
That's I heard about that, and we're gonna put out a follow up to the newsletter today. And for people who don't know what I'm talking about, go to misinfo.com. I have a new edition of the newsletter out today based on these conspiracy theories where Antifa is starting. The right wing thinks that Antifa is creating the wildfires. Then there's a crazy follow up actually that sort of is happening. You mentioned part of it, but there's an additional craziness that I'm going to get to in the newsletter. But yeah, it is stunning that this conspiracy, I mean, not stunning, maybe in the wrong sense, because we know how this has all been going. It shouldn't be shocking in September 2020 that people are seeing something on Facebook and then going out and acting upon it based on this random rumor they saw on Facebook. But yeah, so what is like I'm very unfamiliar with the West Coast. I'm not someone who spends a lot of. In fact, the first time I've ever been on the West Coast was just a few years ago, and it was for a work trip to California. Other than that, I am never been on the West Coast before in all my 34 years of living. So where are these wildfires in Oregon? Like, for example, like is it just along like the one area? Like, is there a safe how far do you have to go to be safe?
Yeah, so this is something that's really scary because there are actually fires. So I live in Portland, which is the Willamette Valley, or I technically live a little bit south of Portland in a suburb called Milwaukee, and it's in a different county. But the Willamette Valley stretches, from north of Portland all the way down to like the middle, like where kind of Eugene area is where it cuts off, the middle of Oregon. And then there's like a small mountain range that we call the Coast Range that goes north to south between the coast and Portland, and the valley. And then we have the Cascades, which are the big mountains where we have like the Mount Hood National Forest, which is a huge forest. And then on the other side of the forest, it's like desert, but those deserts burn every summer too, because they still have trees. They're just a different kind of tree.
Right.
But then basically the Coast Range and the mountains, it's all forest for like hundreds and hundreds of miles. And so I have family who live in Newport over on the coast, and they had to evacuate. So I couldn't even go, like, the fires are mostly south and west or south and east of me. But so it would make sense if I wanted to go west and go to the coast, but there are fires in that mountain range as well. Right.
That's it is a bizarre situation it's inevitable in a sense, the way this country just doesn't take whether this is a fire started by, you know, downed electric wires, or a fire started by human error, or even I've seen a case or two of a person being, you know, accused of starting the fire, because, you know, this is something that happens. People go out there, they fool around, they don't, you know, pay attention to what they're doing, and they start a fire. But climate change is behind all of this in reality. I mean, because there's no reason for it to spread this way if there wasn't, you know, massive drought, heat waves, the inability to put out this fire before it becomes this massive wildfire. So in many ways, it's sort of inevitable, but it's just crazy to see these photos, just how bad this wildfire. I mean, that should say enough. The fact that we have a predetermined set of time in this country, I believe it's June to September, where we know this stuff will happen. It's called wildfire season. It's like the fact that it even exists is, to me, sort of says enough. But you know, it's really crazy, these pictures. Have you seen the online conspiracies jump off the internet in your own world? Like, have you seen people say these things in your own circles?
Yeah, actually, my older brother is ex-military. He's very right-wing, very reactionary, and he's in the National Guard still, and he has been sent to fight fires up in Washington like many, many times. He's in the Washington National Guard. And so we asked him, my sisters and I asked him today if he was going to be deployed to fight fires. And he was like, oh, we don't know yet, whatever. And then he linked me 2 articles about like people who had been arrested for arson in relation to some fires in Washington and in California. And he didn't say that he like thought that they were Antifa, but the fact that he sent them to me, like his commie sister, made me think that that's what he was implying.
Like, do people not realize that arson is literally like you go camping in the woods and you don't properly put out the fire? Like, you just are like willfully negligible, and that's arson?
Exactly. When it causes a forest fire, that's exactly what your charge is. Yeah.
Right. Like it's just stunning that people think like someone went to the middle of the woods and was like, I'm going to start a fire. Like, why? If like there's no like if you're an arsonist, you want to cause like real, like if you're just like a apolitical, no political ideology whatsoever, you're just someone who is an arsonist. You want to cause damage to a structure. If you are a protester starting a fire, you want people to see the fire starting because you're trying to make a point about either A, just the fire disrupting the flow of traffic, or specifically the building or structure you're trying to set fire to. No one goes to the middle of the woods and puts a random tree up in flames for some sort of political purpose. It's just baffling to me. It's just crazy that people think this.
Exactly. And especially in Oregon, like, I don't know how you guys treat your trees out there, but Oregonians are like, even like the right wing people out here are very much like, we're very proud of our forests, and like our timber industry is what built this state and blah, blah, blah. So no matter what your political background is, like we understand and appreciate our forests. Right. And so like nobody would go in and burn a forest down on purpose.
Right. I mean, hell, you're a right winger. You go out there, you do some target practice with your AR-15 in the summer heat. The friction there could create a spark. Boom, you got a forest fire. You don't even like. That's how these things start. To be quite honest with you, like the craziest little thing. Because again, we are the West Coast during this time period is extremely susceptible to these forest fires because A, the amount of the acres of forest, and B, the heat. The climate change, it's just, it's just stunning to me. Like the idea that it doesn't connect. But go ahead.
I know it was supposed to be 97 degrees today. That was the forecast. All day today, it didn't top 70 degrees because the cover of smoke is so thick that you cannot see the sun.
Wow.
And it is honestly the eeriest thing.
Are you living in an area where your skies are completely red or
it's just black. It was like dark brown black all day today.
That's crazy. I can't even.
I have to wear you already wear a mask to go outside, but I have to wear an actual N95 mask to go outside.
Right. That's I can't even imagine what that's like. As someone who's never who's never lived anywhere but New York City, we don't see forest fires, so I can't wildfires. So I can't even imagine how scary that is. Actually, knowing that there's unstoppable fire headed towards where you live. So I hope everything's okay. I hope it all works out.
Thank you.
Most importantly, you and your family stay safe. But in addition to that, I hope, you guys don't have to deal with any damage or anything like that, because I know that can be just as stressful. But, obviously life comes first. Take care of yourselves. And, I hope that calling into the show didn't cost you valuable time. And then I hear on the news that your mom's on TV going, I can't find my daughter. She was Skyping with some dumb YouTuber who begged her to call in, and now she's gone. Please don't let that be the case. Please don't let that be the case.
She would know exactly who it was, because I'm always, when I cook, I listen to your shows. So she's like, who are you listening to?
I love that. That's great. You should, to make sure you keep doing that, we need you to get somewhere safe. So,
Yep.
So, thank you for calling in, too. This was a great call, and you should call in more often. I'm going to attempt to do more of this for the patrons where I open the phone lines, because, if people like you call in, then this is a real show going on here. This isn't some, this isn't like Renee calling in and wasting my time. No, I'm just joking, Renee.
Oh, Renee. We love Renee.
We do love Renee. I just he's my, he's the one that I need to always knock on, because he's that character on the show. The majority. I don't know if calls into the show anymore, but long ago the Majority Report had a guy who went by the name Jimmy Reefer Cake, and I look at Renee as my Jimmy Reefer Cake. But take care, Mariah. Stay safe.
Thank you so much. Have a good one, Matt.
You too. Bye.
Bye.
That was great, and I saw someone was trying to call me while I was talking to Mariah. Feel free to call back in. Jeff from Georgia. The name sounds very familiar. Jeff from Georgia. Hey, wanna give me a ring now? Yeah, I'll do one more call, and then I'll see if there's any more super chats. And then I want to talk about that Antifa thing, and then that's the show. Hey, Jeff, you there?
Hey, buddy. How are you doing?
I'm good.
Should I turn my camera on? Is that a thing you want to see my disgusting face?
Yeah, go ahead. Turn on your camera.
Oh, man. All right.
I mean, I would have asked Mariah to do that, too, but I assume that she wasn't on camera on the account of her trying to evacuate her house. So,
it sounded like she probably had a lot going on.
Right, yeah.
That we don't want to trouble her with. I hope she's getting along well. I hope everyone's getting along well. There's not a bunch of fire outside my house.
Right. You're in, where are you again?
I am in Georgia, of course, because I am the world-famous Jeff from Georgia.
Right, that would make sense. That Jeff from Georgia,
like 5,000 people, maybe. I actually wanted to talk to you a little bit about something that came to my mind as I was listening to your previous call about the fires. It might seem unrelated, but to be straight with you, man, where I live, people wearing masks, it's not really a thing.
In Georgia,
where I live in central Georgia, I don't live in Atlanta. I wear a mask when I work, when I go out. Some people do. People on the clock tend to a little bit, but even they are mostly half-assing it, and nobody else is doing it. And it's been that way for months now. It really struck me that when all this started that, I can't even think of anything smaller to ask of people as a gesture of solidarity than to wear a piece of cloth around your mouth and nose. It really is. It's something it's so cheap it's nearly free. Like, you can find a piece of cloth even if you literally have almost nothing to your name. You can find something to wrap around your face.
Right.
We know it works. We figured that out after months and months and months. No thanks to Bob Woodward, by the way, for that.
Right. It's really stunning that he'd hold on to that. Again, regardless of it not moving a single bit of how people think of Trump, and the fact he would hold on to that is just insanity. And
it just occurred to me that like the forest fire situation and a lot of the challenges we face in our country, these problems of collective action, we don't have a society. Nobody gives a shit about each other. Nobody cares. To the point where they'll rather pull a gun on you if you ask them to pull a piece of cloth over their face and nose than do it for you. Like, it's that insane to live in America right now. At least that's what my little corner of America is like right now. I don't know about everyone else.
I will say living in New York City, maybe it's because we were the hardest hit for so long, and we still hold the high when it comes to deaths in the country, even though literally I believe the rate here is like under 1%. The masks are a commonplace thing here. Mostly, I would say. Are there people who go out without wearing the masks? Sure. Are there people who go out with just like the mask, like, below there where it's supposed to be? Yeah. But for the most part, I would say probably compared to the rest of the country, we probably have the highest rate of mask wearers as well. I mean, it's just not, and it is like what you said, it is the most smallest of asks.
It's so tiny. It's nothing.
Right. And here's the thing too that I want to like drive home. We're not even asking people to do something that hasn't already become commonplace in other countries. Like you go to South Korea, you go to China, there are complete areas that wear these masks well before the coronavirus, ever since SARS in the early 2000s. And it's been such a commonplace thing of general solidarity and caring about your fellow human being that they wore them even when there was no ongoing pandemic, just to make sure they weren't passing their germs to people in public. It's just like, I'm actually in New York City specifically. I live in what is probably one of the biggest Chinatowns in the entire country, if not the biggest. Mm-hmm. And there's also a growing Koreatown. And again, for years, and I've lived here practically my whole life, and for years, I've seen people wear masks just walking around here in America in these communities, and I've never thought two things about it. I mean,
it's not a big deal.
Yeah, it's not a big deal. It's it really is.
The last thing I'll say before I I don't want to take up make this about try to hijack the show or anything.
No, this is great. I love it.
Oh no, please! I'm pleased to be here, man. And I love your show, and I love you, dude. You're the best. I'm a big fan.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that.
Been listening to you for years since you were a wee lad suckling at Sam Cedar's man teats. But what I was gonna say is
that's worse than the Nancy Pelosi stuff. Please throw the Pelosi stuff back on me. I'll take that.
But what I was gonna say about the masses, I'm experiencing a weird not to get too Mike Cernovich about it, but like a time dilation phenomenon, where dude, it's September, and we're still the same messages about everyone wear a mask, everyone wash their hands, everyone wear a mask, everyone wash their hands, don't go out, this is closed. Like all those messages have been the same in my community for like 6 months now. Other countries have moved on. Like they're not still having to tell people all the fucking time, put a mask on and wash their hands, because everyone already fucking figured this out. Right. Excuse me, I'm sorry.
You can curse. No, you can curse on the show.
Talk about Sam Cedar's man teats. But it's getting weird. Other countries are getting back to living something approaching a normal experience, and safely, more or less. Their schools are tending to open back up for some instruction, movie theaters, restaurants, bars. Whereas here, it's either we open up full bore and then we get a bunch of cases, a bunch of people get sick, close everything back down, and it's either one or the other. We can't figure out how to do anything safely because we can't figure out basically how to get anybody to wear a mask.
Right.
Because we can't do that as a society. That's the society in America, and this is like getting really far afield, but the sort of heightened value of money, the pursuit of unrestrained capitalism. as an ascendant value, where really, dude, if you have enough money, you don't need to care about anybody else, because you can pay your way out of all of that stuff. That's the dream, and that's a sick dream to chase, especially in the middle of a pandemic.
Right. I mean, I was just reading today that France is extending, because the government of France was covering 80% of the salaries of furloughed workers, and they just announced today that they're extending that for another year. People are going to have 80% of their salary if they're furloughed for a year, confirmed, set. In this country, we couldn't even give people an extra couple $100 for a few months without it causing a whole fight between the politicians who are in the our government. It is.
Do you remember that? You remember the $1,200? Just a little $1,200.
Yeah. They sent out. Good luck. $1,200. Good luck.
There was like a little study that they did. I forget. I could get in the details wrong, but just for like a very, very brief amount of time, poverty in this country hit the lowest level like it had ever hit.
Right.
Like ever.
Right.
Because that $1,200 allowed so many people who were on the edge to scrape up a little bit, if only temporarily.
Right.
Right. Because we know it didn't last very long. I remember when I told my wife that. Sorry to be like a wife guy on your
No,
show.
it's good. We get it.
When I told my
You have a
wife that, like how poverty fell, she was like, "Oh, okay, well, that's why they'll never send another check."
Well,
I can't have that happen.
Well, that's not to one up you, Jeff, but I told my wives that. No, but as crazy as it sounds, you bring up a great point, but then on top of that, it's $1,200 got people out of poverty, but at the same time, our government literally said, pandemic that's going to go on for about a year minimum. Hope $1,200 and that's it helps. Like literally, they threw $1,200 at us and said, "Good luck." Like it's insane. That's it.
I really am legitimately surprised. I predicted another stimulus check would go out before the election. I thought they'd be insane not to do that, and I mean maybe they are insane, but I was wrong.
I honestly thought so too. If none other than you think it'd be so simple, being that Trump wants his name on the checks and to get all the credit, seems so simple. The Democrats would go for it too. Trump, they want more money to go out to people. Trump just has to say, yeah, we could do that. But again, I need to sign the checks. I'm going to go out there, of course, and I'm going to let people tell people that I did this. You think he would want that, but apparently I don't know what they're planning here. I really don't.
It's not ideal. It's not like a socialist solution or whatever, but like on their terms, just looking at it from where they sit, like businesses need money. Consumers need money to spend. So like it's a direct payment to consumers for them to spend is not like radical socialism. It's not seizing the means of production.
Right.
It really is just to like grease the wheels, keep it going. It's the bare minimum of what you need to do. That's my dog chewing his toys.
That's all good. Don't worry about it. I got pets and kids.
That's me. I like a lot of history. I don't know if people know my show, the Distant Peasant Podcast. So I mostly do historical stuff.
Plug it. Go ahead. Plug it. Go ahead.
Oh, I'll get back to it in a second. But just to say that, historically speaking, like that sort of this is fucking Keynesianism. Like we figured this out 80 years ago. Like this is, and that's not a threat to our system. That's not a threat to capitalism. If it was, then the New Deal and post-New Deal consensus after World War II never would have formulated in the terms that it did. And I think there's a real lack of appreciation with just how far backwards we are sliding. If we're playing a game of Civilization right now, and it was possible to lose civics as time went on, and you became less culturally sophisticated, that's where we're headed.
Right.
Again, our culture can't even, we can't find any shared values strong enough, powerful enough to bind us all together to wear tiny pieces of cloth around our faces.
Right. And the craziest thing is just it's not even just an act of solidarity. Like you said, it is totally that as well. But it's not even just that. There is, I don't even know how much more proof that can possibly be shown that lays it out there the masks fucking work. It's just, it's like you want to get back to normal. You want to open up your restaurants. You want to go to the bars. You want to hang out at sporting events. That'll all happen as soon as everyone wears a goddamn mask. It's so simple.
Which I caught what you're saying about Bob Woodward, and I've looked at that story too, and I just want to say I 100% agree with you. I think it's, I recognize, like, yeah, he was a series of interviews in a book or whatever, and he's like, I don't know if this information is true. He never even followed up on it. He made no effort to get anybody else to follow up on it, like, behind the scenes. I mean, what is journalism for if it's not for disseminating information of public importance like this?
Right.
So just to say, like, all that stuff you're worried about masks, we probably would have figured that out a lot sooner if Bob Woodward, had the stones to say something a little bit earlier.
Right. Yeah, again, the importance here isn't to show that Trump lies. Everyone knows that. The importance here was to show that the journalists did their work and they got the information out there. Doing what he did completely undermines journalists, and during a time where, let me tell you, there's probably never been a time where they're thought of any less. And to be honest, when it comes to the mainstream journalists like Bob Woodward's out there, totally deserving. But there's a lot of hard work. It is funny that usually the guys who've had the biggest success in that field, the ones who get the hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, if not just in salary, but in books and other stuff, they're usually the ones who are the worst at actual journalism. They're the one, like Bob Woodward obviously is not the perfect example of that, being that he has a storied career, but also in that storied career, there's a few instances like this where it was treating journalism as a business.
You think he has a ton of sources still, though, these days? Because I tend to think not so much anymore.
Probably in certain areas he does. Like, there are probably, people retired or died and have moved on. But, I feel like some of these old school journalists probably have some pretty high up and pretty solid sources that even if their source no longer works in there, they'll connect them to who they need to connect with. But if Bob Woodward was reporting something about what was happening on the conspiracy theorist forums in Facebook, I'd be like, I don't know if he would have the best sources on that. But in like something like this, I think these guys usually have it.
Okay.
But that makes it even more ridiculous that someone like him would not use that to the advantage of the American people and get that information out there as soon as he gets it.
I wanted to show. I just realized because I just looked at your shirt. I want to show everyone something. I'm just gonna. This is a little throwback. This is from the 2016 primary. Right
this
there.
one's from 2016 too, right? Yeah.
Oh
this is,
man, dude, we're old school lefties from way back. As
I don't usually do this. I changed my shirt from between co-hosting the Majority Report earlier today and doing this show because if you were watching earlier, I was wearing my choking victim shirt, which has the Mary, Mother of God, and Joseph and baby Jesus, with the upside down crosses and the 666 and the pentagrams. And I was like, usually I don't care, but then I was thinking about it and I was like, I don't want this to somehow hurt Jess's chances. I don't want someone to see that, screenshot it, and go, what? And again, leftover choking victim and their current iteration, leftover crack, they do this totally tongue-in-cheek in jest. They're not actual, not that there's anything wrong with Satanism to begin with, but they don't actually even believe in that. It's all tongue-in-cheek. It's all about they have this whole thing where, one of their major themes of one of their albums was shoot the kids at school. And it was a lot of songs about that, school shootings. And it literally is just all about seeing how far you can push the boundaries of these themes that people automatically have a reaction to, satanic panic, Marilyn Manson being the cause of Columbine. One of their actual.
I remember that. That makes me feel old. I'm old enough to hear that argument made contemporaneously. One of
their most famous shirt design is actually the two Columbine shooters holding up a 40 ounce, and it says on the shirt, "Rock the 40 ounce," and it literally, people, probably who don't know, they've done interviews and they go, yeah, that shit's totally about mocking that whole idea of, music causing school shootings and all, because you remember this was during a time when you're sort of seeing this, and I wanted to do a broader thing on this, but I don't know how we even got this conversation to begin with. But have you seen this ridiculousness over this Netflix movie Cuties?
Whoa! I remember something about it. Because it's an adaptation from something else.
So basically, this indie movie was picked up by Netflix, and it's basically about this.
It had to do with the artwork, the cover art that they put on.
So the movie is basically about a group of young girls. I think they're like 11 years old, and how they're modern young 11-year-olds living in 2020, where everything is very sexualized, and they want to do the current dances. And, I've seen clips, and the point of the movie is for you to be disturbed by it. The point of the movie is for you to say, what is our culture doing to young people where they feel like, we're sexualizing them at such a young age? Yet, people are seeing this, and they're going, this movie is trying to sexualize kids at the young age. This is a movie for pedophiles, and this shows that Hollywood thinks this is sexy or hot. Literally, there's this scene that was going around where the right was up in arms about it, and if you watch the scene, these girls are performing and twerking on stage at 11 years old, and the mothers in the crowd are looking at each other in disgust, like, "Whoa, what did these kids like? That's the point of the movie! Are you kidding me?"
Right.
Netflix did wrong by having this poster look like it was going to be like a toddlers and tiaras thing, where it sort of promotes that stuff.
Yeah,
and makes them
too straight ahead.
But it also shows that it doesn't really matter about Netflix's screw up, because the right is now sharing actual clips from the movie in context, and they still aren't understanding it.
Is it how the old saying goes, satire requires clarity of purpose, and I feel like I'm just speaking off the cuff, so I could change my opinion on this. But it sounds like the problem is the movie itself. The filmmakers have a clarity of purpose. It seems like it's just that they were envisioning an audience that's maybe a little less baby brained than America.
Right. Well, that's the thing. It's a movie made by a black female French director, and she actually said that this is based on her own upbringing.
This is literally, and Americans are too stupid
to get it right. They're too right, and I think you're seeing this. This is literally reminding me of the uproar in the '90s over Mortal Kombat. It's literally reminding me about the satanic panic, the music causes school shootings bullshit. I'm just honestly, my mind is blown. I wasn't quite sure what this whole thing was about. I heard about the Netflix poster. I saw that the right was going up in arms about this. I knew there was some misunderstanding, and then I saw the movie just come out, and then I saw the right wing trending cancel Netflix online today. So I was like, let me see these clips. And I was watching these clips, and I was like, this movie is over the top, and it's supposed to be. You were supposed what would have been the reaction if these weirdos were able to jump online and trend a hashtag and start a movement when Kids came out, the Harmony Korine movie, Gummo? What would their reaction been to those movies? These movies, these are independent artsy films that really get to showing raw versions of American life, and they're well done. The children who act in these movies, quite honestly, are usually well beyond their years mentally and are able to handle this.
Yeah, that's usually the biggest challenge I have in getting really invested in any movie that has a heavy child cast, because I mean, it's just really hard to find great child actors. It's a tough job to do as an adult. So,
right. From what I've seen, I mean, the child actors who usually end up messed up actually are usually the ones who are taken advantage of by their parents, and it's usually the mainstream ones, the ones who end up being in really mainstream, family-friendly movies who blew up. I mean, you never really hear about these young independent actors who, I mean, I don't know, I'm sure it exists, but I mean, there's usually not the money for their parents to screw them up over, So, I mean,
I think Macaulay Culkin is relatively normal. I think.
he had
He's like the only one I can think of.
He personally is, but I'm pretty. If I remember correctly, he had issues with his parents.
Oh yes,
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, listen, like, I need to watch this movie obviously before I form a full opinion on it. But from what I've seen, it is a very provocative movie with 11-year-olds gyrating and doing all sorts of dance moves that you see in the movie. They learn from watching music videos and taking part in the culture of social media and seeing the TikTok dances and stuff like that. And you were supposed to watch this movie and you were supposed to say, what are we doing here? This is like, we are like, you're supposed to be watching this and saying, you're supposed to be seeing what's behind.
In child beauty pageants, maybe like
right. And the idea that, and honestly, what's happening is the QAnon crowd and the Save Our Children right-wingers who have tried to weaponize pedophilia as, obviously pedophilia is bad. No one agrees with pedophilia, and the people who do have something wrong with them. Like, there's no mainstream position that is pro-pedophilia. Pedophilia is disgusting. But they are trying to weaponize pedophilia to try to turn it into something that their enemies, the people they disagree with, are pro for. Democrats are pro pedophilia. Hollywood is pro pedophilia. Does Hollywood have a problem with obviously, but is every actor and every bit player and every director and camera guy and grip and worker in Hollywood? No, not even close. But that's what they want you to think, that everyone who is not a religious conservative, God-fearing patriot like them is a pedophile now.
Did you see that over 50% of Republican voters think the QAnon conspiracy is either all or mostly true?
Yeah, it is. I mean, we are at a point that is truly concerning, and I got to pull it up because back in 2018, January 2018, I did a show with Will Sommer. It was my first show talking about QAnon. Again, January 2018, and Will just had written his first QAnon piece, I believe. And I had known about it in the months prior and was just really acclimating myself at the end of 2017 to what was going on there. In fact, I feel the first QAnon piece I saw in general, I need to get her on the show. A journalist, I think she's with Wired right now. Paris, I can't remember her last name. Martineau, I think. I gotta get her on this show. She's the first person I saw who wrote about QAnon, period. This is October 2017, I believe. And then I had Will on in January, and then I went on the Majority Report a week later, and I'm telling Sam, listen, what you are going to see is you are going to see QAnon become the incubator for conspiracy theories. Everything is going to be rolled up into QAnon going forward. And instead of things dying out like Pizzagate did, it's going to last in perpetuity because QAnon is going to keep it going as the all-powering charger for all these smaller conspiracy theories. And it's what we're seeing. Literally anything
and it's too big. It's got too much momentum now to be totally, completely just. Everyone to decide, that's all bullshit. We all realize that now. It's too big because now it's getting to the point where it's beginning to generate from within itself defenses.
It's going
different, and now different QAnon orthodoxies are forming. It's like Christianity, basically, the first century, I guess.
if Biden wins, and listen, I think this. I've told people my feelings. I don't think you should. I think the best way to get people to vote strategically is to not force them anything. Is just make your argument. I think it is imperative that Trump loses. I think we are at a point of. I think overall, if you're looking at the lives lost, I still think the Bush administration is the most harmful when it comes to raw value, total numbers of deaths in the world. Bush administration is the GOAT. You're not getting.
I'm sorry, they still have the title, guys.
Yeah, they're not. Yeah. But I think when it comes to a real mental health crisis in this country, I think we are on the tipping point of no return for a large swath of people, and that is where the Trump administration, Donald Trump, is making that happen. And I think it's imperative that he's not the president. for the mental health of this country, I think it is imperative he loses in November. Take that however you want to in terms of how you feel like you need to vote. But if Biden wins, I think QAnon will become the Tea Party of going forward, but in a way that the Tea Party never was. I think it's literally going to be, imagine those crazy Tea Party rallies if it wasn't just a bunch of people driven by racism, if it was a bunch of people driven by racism as well as conspiracy theories, and you can't even there's no even talking any sense into like for example, you can talk to a racist, like a casual racist, someone who doesn't consider themselves like a Nazi or a member of the KKK or even a white supremacist, someone who's just like a normal everyday American who's just casually racist. You can talk to them and they'll go out of their way to say, no, I'm not racist, and they'll try to prove to you they're not racist. I have black friends. I talk to black people. I think black people should be able to vote and they should be able to eat at the same counter as me. They'll say those things even though they probably don't want a black family moving into their neighborhood. But they'll say
that's where it always breaks down. Right.
Right. But they'll there's areas where they'll agree that black people and people of color are human beings as well. But there's really no casual conspiracy theorist in what we're seeing in this QAnon thing. Like, you're not going to be able to talk sense into the coronavirus skeptic, mid-30s influencer mom. Like, you're not going to be able to go there. She's not going to go out of her way to convince you that, she doesn't agree that, child trafficking is, you're not going to talk sense into that. She thinks that 800,000 children are go missing every year and they're all being trafficked.
Yeah.
That's
because I would say that, like, by that casual racist, like, talking to them politically, I think what you mean and what I would be in favor of is, like, they're racist and we don't like that, but we're going to try to organize them on the basis of something other than that in their politics, their class interests, perhaps. How are they feeling about their job? How are they feeling about healthcare? Can we appeal to them on some of their basis that doesn't involve appealing to their racism?
I mean,
with QAnon conspiracy nuts, like, none of that, all that's going to be off the table because they manufacture their own realities.
Yes.
So, like, talking to them about reality is pointless. Like, you may as well be talking to a dog about what it's like on the moon. Like, he's just not going to understand you.
Right. I mean, I've talked about in the show how people who fall down like the white supremacist rabbit hole online and become radicalized into becoming a white nationalist or whatever. There are some that are too far gone, but a lot of them can be brought to the other side. There's still some sort of reasoning. Usually they're just looking for a scapegoat, an outlet for their frustrations. Not everyone, obviously, but also
over time.
Another proof is just look at all of a sudden the enormous amount of support for Black Lives Matter. Like, if someone in 2015 was telling you how they don't agree Black Lives Matter, all lives matter. That's a casual racist right there. They're being, they can't just admit that Black Lives Matter. They have to automatically say that all lives matter too. But that same person now, not all of them obviously, but a good number of them, to show you that the polls now say that the majority now support Black Lives Matter. Those people are now saying, you know what, I thought about it and I've seen what's been going on. I've seen these police shootings. There's been so many of them. And I've thought about it and I've come around. You know what? Black lives do matter and I get it. That's because that group's name is because to some sections of society, Black lives don't. So I mean, there is saving some people, but when you're you've said it perfectly. When you're manufacturing your own reality, how do you get on that level? You can't.
I think you just have to wait. Maybe their children. That's like you talk to their kids.
Right. Well, the scary thing about that is there's four.
I did not mean to hop on here for like a half hour, but I guess it has been.
You brought great conversation, man.
Can I talk a little bit about who I am, what I do? I won't take too long to plug myself.
Oh yeah, go ahead, please. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Do it.
Folks, people don't know I'm Jeff from Georgia. I'm the Distant Peasant on Twitter at Jeff is Dudeness. I have a podcast. It's at distantpeasant.com, Patreon/distantpeasant. And it's really good. It's not like most podcasts. A lot of podcasts, just a conversation like me and Matt are having here, which is great. And I love to have because he does not know this. He's going to learn it live right now. I actually very much like and respect Matt Bender a lot. He means a lot to me. in my journey as a thinker and a media personality myself.
Ooh.
Now, I guess
My opinion of you as a thinker just went down a notch.
I think
if I'm your influence,
and even if I don't always, well, he's got a good enough head on his shoulders that he's always worth listening to and engaging with. You know, if his arguments are wrong, they deserve to be slapped down and met on the field of battle. You know, the marketplace of ideas. But I mostly write scripts about history and socialism and stuff. Right now, I'm working on a really cool thing about. I've got the title in mind already. A nation conceived in liberty. I think we once had a president talk about something like that. And I found one in America, but it's not the one that you're thinking of, because it's not the one that was born in Philadelphia or anything like that. It's actually the Seminole Nation, which is a truly fascinating, racially syncretic people that was forging itself in a whole new culture on the borders of Georgia and Florida plantations, and Uncle Sam's most expensive Indian war ever was fought against him. So I'm about 2,000 words into that script right now. That's what's coming out next. And I also run a Twitch channel at Post Revolution if people want to check that out. We keep things a little more casual there, but I hope to come back on Doomed again.
Oh, you should, and you should come on as a.
That's way more important than any of that bullshit I just talked about.
You should come on as a guest too. We should figure this out. Yeah,
I'd love to, man.
We should do it.
We'll hit you up in DMs.
I'm pretty sure I've come across it before, but it just hit me now that Jeff from Georgia is Dissident Penzant, and you're one and the same. Yeah,
that's me, dude. That's me.
Perfect. All right, awesome, man. Thanks for calling. I really appreciate it. This was a great call.
Subscribe to the Doomed podcast, which is a fantastic podcast made by my friend and comrade, Matt Bender.
Aw, thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. And everyone do the same for Jeff. All right, folks. A few more super chats and comments, and then that's it. I didn't get to the Antifa thing. Let's see. We'll see. Abby says, I'm evacuating. Matt says, yo, but you got time for a Skype sesh? That is what I did, right? Right, Champagne Kame. LOL, Bender's like, please get the safety, but also you got like 5 minutes to spare. Oh, I did do that, didn't I? Well, listen. I trusted Mariah to have to make that call. Hope she made the right one. Renee with the super chat. Accelerationism meet Reichstag. Oh yeah. Misha says it was snowing ashes in California. Jeez. Pencil Pauly says Antifa pushed iceberg in front of the Titanic. Fox News headline, right. Change says Antifa stole my virginity. Zoe says Antifa did 9/11. Ooh. On the anniversary of 9/11, Zoe? Well, it will be in a few minutes. Renee with another super chat. Ask her about the firefighting helicopters being deployed to Afghanistan. Oh, I didn't see this, but yeah, that's right. That's crazy that the firefighting helicopters aren't even here in the States to help. Our firefighting helicopters. Unbelievable. Salami Mommy says, folks, we love our forests. Oh, yeah, that's right. We love our forests, folks. Our big, beautiful forests. Right, Umar. Jeff from Georgia is an MR caller, majority report caller. Absolutely. A lot of people were happy to hear Jeff calling. I was also happy to hear Jeff calling. Samantha says, so many selfish pricks who won't wear a mask. I went to a funeral for a family member who died from COVID, and next to no one would wear a mask at the celebration afterwards, and that's in Illinois. Oh, I'm sorry for your loss, Samantha. Jeez. Renee says Sam's teat sounds like a bar. Tyler says, Renee, you just killed me. There's so many comments. I gotta find the super. I'm actually just scrolling through to get to the super chats, and I'm just grabbing whatever I stop on as I scroll through. On the way, Renee with another super chat. I've been calling COVID-19 Cain's revenge or Cain's syphilis, right? Mike V says Matt Christman has a good talk on YouTube regarding the mask war. That's Matt Christman of Chapo. Folks, if you want to check it out. All right, I think that's it for the super chats for now. I just want to make sure. 1 second. All right, I'm going to do this really quick. As we, it's because I got the, I put it out the latest edition of the of misinfo.com, the Misinfo newsletter, and I wanted to quickly talk about it. There's going to be a follow-up because there's been some additional information out there, but really quick, you probably got some from the conversation I had with Mariah, but there's this bizarre conspiracy being spread by the right wing right now, and it's actually grown since I wrote about it and last night and published it this morning, that Antifa is responsible for the wildfires, and not even like, an accidental fire from an Antifa encampment in the woods. No, literally the right wing is spreading this crazy theory that Antifa is purposefully setting fires. I mean, literally, it's called, like I've mentioned 100 times, we're in what is called wildfire season. There's been a gender reveal party that started one wildfire, a trees knocking down a electric line starting another fire, countless other fires that are being investigated. There's been 1 or 2 people I saw that were arrested for arson, which, again, can mean many things. Also, none of that mentions Antifa, so I don't know where, they show that as if a lot of times these right-wingers who say Antifa is starting the fires share those articles about those arsonists as if the word Antifa and the word arson is one and the same. Just really. But anyway, I looked into where this was spreading because it was just all over the place. A lot of times it was, heard from, through the grapevine. Oh, I heard a brother of a friend say they saw Antifa setting fires. Oh, I heard a former co-worker's daughter say she heard on the police line that they were looking for Antifa members starting fires. It's bizarre, Facebook rumors and posts that people take as actual sourcing and news. And there was this local right-wing outlet, the Roseburg Post or something like that. Hold on, let me pull up the actual outlet here. The Roseburg Beacon, excuse me. And it presents itself as this straight-up, local Oregon print weekly. But in reality, it's run by this conservative local real estate guy who just on his own personal Facebook page spreads right-wing conspiracies and COVID skepticism and anti-mask propaganda. And it's just, and he's spreading these Antifa rumors. And because it's a local outlet, people think it must be truthful. And then there's another post I've been seeing go around from Russia Today. And, not to get all Russia conspiracy theorist on you, but this is an actual RT headline where Antifa are thrilled to hear this. Portland police ask protesters not to start blazes amid statewide wildfire emergency. And if you look at the article, the Portland police actually just said, hey, demonstrators, please try not to spark fires tonight. Be aware of what's going on in the rest of the state. Thank you, and carry on or whatever. So where is this headline that connects Antifa fires to the wildfires by subtly saying, or not so subtly saying even, that they support these wildfires, which one could assume means they could be behind them. Russia Today quotes right-wing provocateur Andy No as the source of that quote, Antifa supports the wildfires. So, I mean, you have all sorts of ridiculousness out there promoting this, and I'm going to do a follow-up because there's some additional craziness going on that's promoting this, and honestly, it's grown since I wrote this piece. And it just goes to show you how far gone just a number of people in this country are. Just there is a real knowledge gap, just a reading comprehension gap, a lack of understanding of just basic sourcing and researching, and I don't know what we can do about it at this point, because there's just so many people who are now just following conspiracy theory as legitimate news. We're going to do tons of shows about this. I mean, you guys know that's what this podcast is about. This podcast is about far right-wing movements and conspiracies. Mainly. You know, every now and then I talk about whatever, but that's the bread and butter here. And I've been talking with a lot of guests to really dive into this and figure out what we could do, if anything. All right, folks, that's the show for today. I am exhausted. Another Thursday full of I still have the Skype thing up. Another Thursday full of streaming, I guess. Full of hosting shows, I guess. I am tapping out now. Thank you, everyone, for calling in, for your comments. If you are in an area affected by these wildfires, I truly hope everything is okay with you and your family. And once that is secured and everyone's okay, everyone's lives are okay, I also hope that your homes and your most, I'm not one for, things can be purchased again, furniture and electronics and stuff. But I'm also I'm a bit of a hoarder when it comes to sentimental value things. So I can understand how much it would hurt to lose, family items passed down from grandparents, great-grandparents. Photos, very important, obviously. Photographs of family members. So I also truly hope that all your most important items also make it out of this. Most important, sentimental value things. But again, most importantly, number one, your life and the life of your family. Your lives, your family. I'm exhausted now. I'm just stuttering now. Take care, everyone. I will see you all next time on Doomed.